So let's talk about the reactions to the Armory Show. And these reactions are diverse, and they're going to be continuing for the better part of a year. This is an incredible nationwide conversation that's happening primarily in newsprint. So let's take a look at some of the cartoons, because it's oftentimes a fun way of getting a sense for what people think and what different people think, because often it's a visual way of reflecting society in unto itself. So what we're seeing here, the modern art show, is they're trying to recreate different scenes by these various artists. They're trying to basically say that, well, this is really easy. For example, Statue of Liberty in the month of June, they're saying they're going, look, it's obvious what this is. It's just a couple of minor changes. It's the sort of thing I can do. It's a criticism that we hear all the time about modern art. So here they're really playing on the idea of titles, of unusual titles that don't seem to necessarily reflect what's going on. We have other pieces too, like how to become a post-impressionist paint slinger. And here they're picking on, remember, Gauguin and Van Gogh and others. And what they're doing is they're basically saying, look, anyone can do this. This is so easy. Here, take a cat, get it, soak it in paint and throw it at a canvas and you'll get a painting. Now, this is based on a basic misunderstanding. Obviously, post-impressionist paintings of Van Gogh doesn't look like a bunch of splatter. But the person creating this is taking that same view that we see so often in the public, playing off, the idea of I'm just going to grab a movement, because most people don't know what post-impressionism is anyway, and I'm going to throw at it the idea of throwing paint at a canvas. By the way, way before throwing paint at a canvas is really a thing, because obviously that won't happen until around the 1940s. But we get this sort of reflection of a common idea, this idea that anyone can do it, that artists are, especially art critics, are easily tricked, that they can sit there and go, well, yeah, this is art, even though it was created by an elephant or a monkey or a child or something like that. Then we have the New Art Fest, which again is looking at the show. We see a Cubist exhibit, and obviously when they look at Cubism, they focus on the name only and create works that are cubed. We see Portrait of a Lady, which reminds us of Gertrude Stein, the portrait of Gertrude Stein, so famously done by Picasso. But in this case, declared to be a futurist piece. Again, that intentional or unintentional misunderstanding. We have a number of different pieces sort of being shown and being picked on, and then at the bottom, the route taken by the old masters after seeing advanced art exhibits. In other words, the idea that Velasquez or Rembrandt or Michelangelo or others would be terrified of this, when in fact they might in fact like this kind of art. It may say something to them. It's a matter sometimes of the time and sometimes of context. Remember, photography is the issue here. Photography is pushing us down this road, and to most people, they're saying, they're going, well, this is ridiculous. It's a new idea. And of course, new ideas are much easier to criticize than they are to accept. So here we see a Cubist picture, again, composed by Dad, under the inspiration of the incoming bills for the ladies' spring purchases. So another misunderstanding, intentional misunderstanding of Cubism, but then using it to in another direction, basically pushing the idea that women will just spend money when allowed to do so. And so we're combining two different issues in one piece, but again, bringing in that Cubist idea. And it's really not a Cubist work, that's pretty obvious, but you can see where someone would take that and go, hey, let's combine these two ideas, put them together, and we'll really speak to society. Then we have D is for Duchamp. Again, this is getting at nude descending a staircase, number 2. So D is for Duchamp, the deep-dyed deceiver, who draws accordions, labels them stairs with a lady that must have been done in a fever. His model won't see her, we trust it would grieve her. Should the stairway collapse, QB's good at repairs. D is for Duchamp, the deep-dyed deceiver. The idea that Duchamp is creating something that would just drive the model herself up a wall. When in fact, that's obviously not going to be the case. The model likely knew what was going on. It's again that sort of way of looking at things and saying, well, there must be a reason why I dislike it. And for a lot of people, they just dislike and then they don't come up with a good reason. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of these, is people who dislike the art, but they don't have a good rationale. So they're trying to come up with something. They're trying to come up with a reason why they dislike it. So they're playing off of these very simple ideas. For example, hey, look at how goofy this is. I'm going to make fun of it. It's really easy. Making fun of something is really easy. Understanding it is really hard, and that's why we're here in art history. Then we have Mama's Angel Child. This is sort of a deep and disturbing piece, where in the first panel, we see a child being taken to the exhibition, the Armory Show. And then the child falls asleep and wakes up in a nightmare where she's surrounded by futurist and cubist ideas. They are always mixing the two up. And finally, she ends up striped, and then an artist starts to paint her and then throws paint at her because you'll see he's blindfolded, and that's the only way that obviously these pieces are being created. The artist must be blindfolded. Obviously, anyone could see that this is not good art. That's sort of the idea behind it. We see the paint thrown, the girl panicking. She wakes up. It's a dream. She wakes up her family. So again, that idea that this must be a nightmare, that all of this art is a nightmare, that it's all easily done and simply done. And my question is, if it's so simply done, why aren't all these other people famous artists? Well, it's because usually the great art, the avant-garde art, really speaks to the time period, really captures what society's concerns are, really captures society as a whole. And obviously, if we're simply copying something, we're not doing that. So it's getting at that idea of anyone can do this and how ridiculous is this art and all of these sorts of ideas. And then this one, nobody who has been drinking is let to see this show. So it's giving you this idea that if you've been drinking, if there's anything mentally wrong with you, you will fall apart. And we see that here as someone moves through the galleries and seems to go further and further down that path, and then is taken off to Bellevue, the mental institution at the time in New York. So we see the post-impressionism portrait, or a post-impressionism portrait. They're really keying in on post-impressionism quite a bit. We see cubism here. We see this sort of interesting abstraction. So again, intentional misunderstanding, kind of making fun of and picking fun at. But of course, it's not going to be fun to make a cartoon that says, hey, did you go to the show? Because it's really awesome. It's much better to make the cartoon that says, yeah, it was horrible and here's why, and I get to pick fun at it. Because most people don't understand it. 99% of the American population at the time does not understand what's going on at the Armory Show. Not that they don't have the ability to understand, but they've never been exposed to anything like this. So of course they're going to have a negative reaction. And the cartoonists are simply reflecting that back at the American public. So let's look at some more.